Thank you, Lascian Corla.
Are you sharing time?
I believe I'm sharing my time with Deputy Alex White, but I know things seem to be running a little bit faster. So I assume he'll pop in at some stage.
Thank you.
Lascian Corla, as I said, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. And I want to speak about the ESM bill in the context of three things in particular. The yes vote that was received last week, a better deal on our bank debt, which a number of people have mentioned already, and on moving from the crisis management to taking more proactive steps to tackle the unemployment crisis in Europe and particularly in Ireland. Firstly, I am very pleased that we voted yes last Thursday for the Fiscal Compact Treaty. It was an important vote for our country and one that gives us a platform to build our recovery on. Financial stability is extremely important, and the rules that have been put down in relation to debts and deficits will enhance confidence in our country, and I am pleased that voters endorsed these proposals. In saying that, I have spent a lot of time on the doorsteps over the last few weeks, for the last 5 weeks or thereabouts, and we must take on the reception and the views that we have heard of the people on the doors. Those who voted yes, those who voted no. There are genuine concerns out there, and I do think as a government that we do need to see what we can do about some of those concerns. They are very real, and I do think there's an obligation on us to do something about that. I think much has been said in the past few weeks about the European Stability Mechanism and the limitations of the Eurozone, but what we need to remember is that there was nothing like the ESM existing before in the Eurozone. Up to now, the Euro didn't have a permanent bailout fund to back up the currency. Now we do have such a fund. The European Central Bank has also evolved over the past few years to take up a role far broader than it was ever imagined in the first place. These are two very important developments. We use a shared currency, but it is also a global reserve currency. And the crisis of the past few years exposed some of its limitations. These limitations have created uncertainty about the certain Eurozone countries and how they could continue to finance themselves independently. This uncertainty, I believe, persists in this country and in other countries, and countries may need this fund. This fund also is a backstop for countries. It will be there if we need it and if others need it. To suggest, as some on the no side did over the past few weeks, that vetoing or attempting to veto this fund would in any way advance the interests of the Irish people, I believe was a huge mistake. What was never explained from the no side was how we would ever finance ourselves or get rid of our deficit if we voted no. And I want to go back to that door-to-door experience for a second. I believe Sinn Féin, Lascian Corla, on the door were exceptionally disingenuous. They were disingenuous in what they said to people and on the reasons to vote no. They encouraged people in my area to vote no, an area that relies heavily on state supports, where people rely heavily on family income supports to meet their daily needs. And they went and knocked on those doors and encouraged people to vote no. And one story that I heard about was where they went up to a door, and the person was a carer, and they said, if you vote yes, your carer's allowance will be cut even more. That is being just disingenuous with people, and I believe that's morally wrong. Sinn Féin, I believe, Lascian Corla, need to stop being involved in political opportunism, and I'm disappointed that Peadar Tabine has left here at the moment. They need to stop putting the political advancement of their own party ahead of the people who have elected them here. It was morally wrong to do that, and they need to stop doing that. And this isn't the first time. They've been doing it endlessly, and they need to stop if they want to be taken serious. I, for one, don't take them serious, Lascian Corla, and I hope anybody who's watching this or watches it back on Facebook and so on believes and understands that they need to question whether or not they should take them seriously. If they want to be involved in real democratic politics down here, they have to start playing ball and playing it fair. And the first way to start is by being honest and genuine with the people who elected them. I stood on those doors, and because I was on the yes side, I was limited in what I could say because I could only speak about the truth. When you're on the no side, it's very easy to say what you want because the no side was unlimited what it could say because they didn't have to speak about the truth and the truth alone. One just has to look up to the north, Lascian Corla, and I have to put this in because endlessly we speak about this, but people just don't seem to be listening to it. Sinn Féin say these things down here. They give out about the things down here. They ask people to vote no down here. And I just find it, I can't understand why people are taking them serious. And I just want to quote one thing in particular. There was an ad in the Belfast Telegraph, and Pat Kenny mentioned it there in his interview on a one-to-one with Sinn Féin there recently with Pierce Doherty. And he asked, you're talking about pay caps down here and rural schools being encouraged to amalgamate, and look what you're doing up the north. And one frightening piece of evidence to show that they really don't mean what they say is that they had an ad in the Belfast Telegraph advertising an advisor to the Deputy First Minister, Martin McGuinness, with a salary of up to 205,000 sterling, i.e. about $250,000 down here. If Sinn Féin want to get serious with politics down here, they need to start playing ball, and that starts by being honest. And if honesty means you lose your seat, I'd rather lose my seat and be honest with people than maintain my seat and use it for political advancement. And I've one word of advice before I go back on Lascian Corla, and that's to Sinn Féin. Stop leading people up the garden path. Stop being disingenuous and stop your auction politics. Back to the main debate, Lascian Corla, and I just want to remember that we have a common cause in this area as we have shared responsibility as a common currency. We depend on this currency, as everybody knows. It's the money in our pocket, it's the money that pays our bills, it's the money that pays our mortgage. And the speculation about its future directly impacts on our economy and the lives of Irish people. Attempting to veto a fund, as was suggested by the No side, designed to help countries in distress, would have served no one's interest. I believe we voted last week for the stability of a shared currency, and I think we have played our part. We are in uncertain times, and everybody knows that. And the situation in Spain and places like Spain, and not with unknown losses in their banks, has huge potential consequences for ourselves too. I think the lesson of how the banking crisis was handled here is that you need to separate the banking losses from the state. In this regard, we now need a deal on our debt, as a number of speakers have said beforehand, to reduce the burden we have taken on. And this was something that was mentioned many times on the door. If this can be done through the ESM or some means of sharing the liabilities we took on, this would help this state. I welcome the Taoiseach Eamon Gilmore's comments this week that our yes vote strengthened our hand in negotiations on the bank debt and also on the growth agenda in Europe. While we are not privy to what form these negotiations on the bank debt are taken, I can appreciate that in negotiations you don't disclose your strategy or broadcast your every move, but I sincerely hope we see progress on this issue for the Irish people. Whatever the outcome, the solution to Europe's banking debt will be a political solution, so we need to be at the heart of policy responses to the crisis, and I believe a yes vote has put us in that position. It is also important to recognise the importance of the yes vote in terms of our influence in Europe and on the future growth agenda, which both Fine Gael and Labour have always believed in. Political developments in Europe recently with the French election have given added impetus to the growth agenda. There have been some very welcome soundings at European level about country-specific jobs plans, better use of structural funds for job creation, and in particular for youth unemployment, which is an area of huge interest to myself here. I think the political dialogue is changing to address this situation, and what has been missing to date is an additional fund at European level to tackle the problems in individual countries, such as youth unemployment in Ireland. The unemployment problem in Europe, and in particular the ones of youth unemployment, is a critical issue, as I mentioned at the beginning. In a recent OECD report, the proportion of European youths not in employment, education or training ranges from 5 and 6% in countries like Sweden and Austria to 16 and 17% in Ireland and Italy. This emerging divide in Europe cannot be allowed to form. A Europe with such clear divides relating to opportunities will shatter the idea of a common cause or solidarity.
1 minute.
New policies, I believe, based on solidarity between European countries need to be adopted to take these huge challenges on board. This is why influence matters. This is why our yes vote mattered last week, and it allows Irish involvement in Europe to operate at a full capacity, fighting for our recovery, for our jobs and our growth. Thank you, Lascian Corla.